Welcome to the Big Tech Gut Check for the week of May 13th, 2024. This is a super quick weekly update for parents on all things social media and big tech. First up, and most importantly this week, is the topic of sextortion. If you have a teenager or a preteen, boy or girl, it is likely that they will get hit with a sextortion scheme. Here's what you should know and what you should tell your kids. There are bad guys in West Africa. They are using Instagram and Snapchat mainly to create fake profiles. They are pretending they are teenage girls and adding hundreds of American kids as friends every single day. They are targeting communities and groups of friends within those communities, so children may think, oh, that's a mutual friend from somewhere across town. If your child does add one of these strangers as a friend, they will begin chatting. These scammers are being flirty and sending images of the girls they're pretending to be. Then they're asking for an image back, a photo without clothes on. Hundreds of thousands of teenagers, especially boys, have been fooled by this. They think they're flirting with a young girl and they end up sharing the nude photo. And once that photo is shared, the threats begin. The scammer reveals himself and asks for money. If the child pays, the scammer asks for more money. They are relentless and they are cruel. They are working from scripts that are openly shared online between thousands of these scammers. Some boys have been targeted and so devastated that they took their own life. In the case of Jordan DeMay, the scammer encouraged and pushed him to suicide. I have an interview with Jordan's dad, John DeMay, that is live on the podcast now. I know that this is scary and you may think this is not going to happen to my kid. Unfortunately, experts are saying that most kids are going to be targeted. So we have to inform our children to be careful with strangers online. Just like in real life, but online, it's even easier to pretend you're someone else. So kids can't add strangers online if they haven't met them in real life. They can't send nude images. But, and this is the most important part, if they do send the nude and find themselves faced with a sextortion scheme, you need to ensure them that you know what to do to fix it. It will be okay. You won't be upset, and it's so important that they tell you. I will share some resources to report sextortion schemes in the episode notes. This is a conversation I don't want to have with my kids, but we have to. Like I said, it's very likely they will be added by these men. It's such a huge problem that President Biden just signed a new law called the Report Act. It turns out that these social media platforms aren't so good at finding and removing these scammers' profiles. So the Report Act will require social media companies to monitor and remove profiles who are sextorting and grooming young users. I wish this was a requirement set in place years ago, but nonetheless, it will help to keep social media platforms accountable going forward. If you want more information on sextortion, there's a really good New York Times article from this week titled Chelsea asked for nude pictures, then the sextortion scheme began. That article features cyber analyst Paul Raphael, who I had on the podcast this week. My conversation with Paul is now live at Scrolling to Death. It's called Protecting Our Kids from Sextortion. All right, we're going to stay on Meta for a couple more updates, and I'll warn you, it's not looking good for our kids on Instagram. This week, the New York Times dropped a story titled, On Instagram, a jewelry ad draws solicitations for sex with a 5-year-old. Yes, you heard that right. Reporters at the Times performed an investigation into Instagram's ad targeting. They did this after finding out that an Instagram ad for children's jewelry featuring a 5-year-old girl was served to nearly all adult male users. So the Times set up test ads on Instagram using the same photos of this little girl and choosing targeting similar to the interests of moms. The ads were not only served to 80% men, they drew the attention of convicted sex offenders. 2 of the sex offenders made phone calls through the apps with offers to pay the child for sexual acts. One man who contacted the account has been convicted in New York for sexually assaulting a 4-year-old. Now, Meta states that they prohibit sex offenders from being on Instagram, and the state of New York actually shares email addresses of sex offenders with Meta every week to get them removed. I guess Meta just missed this one. So to summarize the issue here, Instagram's own ad algorithm is serving photos of young girls to men who have shown a sexual interest in children. How are we in a place where one of the biggest companies in the world is actively facilitating pedophilia? Something is very wrong with this system. Now, I hope that Meta is rocked by these findings and making changes, but I'm not counting on it. That has not been their MO. So as usual, parents need to make the hard decisions, do the work, and educate ourselves. And the lesson here for me is kids' photos are not safe on Instagram or Facebook for that matter. Next up, Operation MetaPhile was released. 3 men were arrested in New Mexico after a months-long undercover investigation of child predators operating on Instagram and Facebook. This investigation is named Operation MetaPhile, highlighting the common experience that children have encountering pedophiles on Meta's platforms. So the investigators here created fake profiles as children under 13. These minor profiles were contacted by adult men. 3 of these men engaged sexually with the child online and then coordinated to meet the children at a local hotel where they were arrested. New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres shared, quote, "The decoy accounts with which these suspects engaged mirror the experience children can and are having on Facebook and Instagram. Operation MetaPhile uncovered how older men seek out these minors and solicit conversations that quickly turn into graphic sexual conversations with children they know are underage. Instagram and Facebook are spaces that sexual predators actively use to hunt, groom, and victimize children." This investigation is part of New Mexico's lawsuit against Meta, which was filed in December. Many internal documents from Meta have been uncovered in this investigation, one where Meta employees themselves estimate that approximately 100,000 children a day are subjected to sexual harassment on Meta's platforms. If this isn't a reason to keep your children off of Instagram and Facebook, I don't know what is. And Meta, shame on you for allowing this to happen to our children. This crackdown on Meta is echoing all over the world. The European Union announced a formal investigation into Meta, citing child safety concerns. Their 3 main concerns with Facebook and Instagram are, 1, whether the platform's algorithms may stimulate behavioral addictions in children. 2, they are concerned about Meta's age verification process. We know there are millions of kids under 13 on the platforms, so these concerns are valid. And 3rd, the investigation will determine whether the company is compliant in submitting its plans to mitigate child safety issues across its platforms. I'm going to go ahead and say no, they're not compliant, but I can't wait to see the results of this investigation. Now let's talk about Snapchat. So in prepping for these weekly updates, I searched Google and several news sites for updates on the big social media platforms. I filled you in on Meta already. It was not a good week for them, but it's also not a good week or year or many years for Snapchat. It's not uncommon for me to find very concerning news about Snapchat on a weekly basis. Here are the main news results for Snapchat this week. Arcadia student charged after Snapchat threat to middle school. Duluth man charged for sexually assaulting a teen he met on Snapchat. Edinburgh resident sentenced after using Snapchat to lure 15-year-old. And another update on the predator in Duluth. News feeds are currently and nearly always filled with predatory and violent behavior that stems from Snapchat. And you don't have to think very hard to figure out why predators, drug dealers, bullies use Snapchat. It's because the messages disappear. It is not an innocent chatting app for teens. It's an addictive and highly dangerous social media platform where children are getting harmed. I have reported too many of these stories to be convinced otherwise. All right, now a brief update on TikTok. As you guys probably know, the US passed a law that requires ByteDance, the Chinese company who owns TikTok, to either sell TikTok to an American company or will remove TikTok from our app stores. This week, billionaire real estate mogul Frank McCord stated that he is putting together a consortium to buy the platform. He is assembling a group of specialists, including investment bankers, lawyers, as well as technology experts, academics, and parents to consult on the purchase. I'm a parent. Can I get on that consortium? If TikTok is purchased by Americans, I pray that adjustments are made to make the platform safer for teenagers. But we will see. I'll keep you updated on TikTok. I'm going to end with the research update for you guys. So a new peer-reviewed study by Nature Reviews Psychology found that social media environments might amplify the sociocognitive processes that make adolescents more vulnerable to mental health conditions. Social media make the kids more vulnerable in their mental health. So this includes changes to behavior, such as sharing risky content, and changes to cognition, modifications in self-concept, social comparison, responsiveness to social feedback, and experiences of social exclusion. While these results may not be surprising to you, it's important that we continue to prove the harms of social media through research. Social media companies themselves are spending millions of dollars on research to show how safe their platforms are and how happy they make teenagers. These articles are biased. New ones hit every week. It is vital that we continue to perform unbiased research, amplify the results around how social media use is truly affecting children and teens. This research will help us to get legislation passed to make the platforms safer. Because the platforms themselves, they say they're safe for 13-year-olds, but that doesn't mean it's true. What it means is that these companies see teenagers as products that they can make tons of money off of for their entire lifetime. Do we want our children to be products? To be served manipulative ads and violent and sexualized content when they're barely a teenager? I don't. So what can we do as parents? We can delay our kids' use of social media as a society. Maybe 16 is more appropriate, maybe 18. And legislators are working to get laws passed, like the Kids Online Safety Act, which will require social media companies to make their products safe for children. I'm going to start a new series of interviews with state legislators and representatives so that we can get more insight into what's happening with the laws to protect our kids. Stay tuned for that. But some states here and around the world are even banning social media entirely for kids, which would require actual age verification to be implemented. For example, South Australia is currently examining a ban on social media for kids under 14. Same with many U.S. states like Florida, Louisiana, Texas, and many others. Tennessee is actually implementing parental permission for anyone under 18 to sign up for social media. I'm glad to see these movements in the right direction, raising the age limit for social media use, and then getting parents permission so that we can be involved in that decision on whether or not our kids are on social media. All right, lots happening in the world of social media and big tech. I'll cut it here for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll check back next Friday with another Big Tech Gut Check here on Scrolling to Death.